Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Heather with Creativity by Heather BE. I hope that you are all doing well. Today I am sharing a fun birthday card for you today. This is actually a card from my mother, and I'm going to be using several Simon Hurley stamp sets and also stencils, and I'm going to show you a quick technique with the stencils, which is really fun. So I'm going to be using the Happy Birthday from the Bestest Friends set, and this is a set that was in the previous release. The stencil I'm going to be using today is the Leafy green stencil, and I'm going to show you different ways to position this to get some really cool looks. I'm also going to be using the large sunflower from Flower Picking Friend, and you can see with my hand there beside it, it is a really large flower, which I love these because they're great focal points. And I'm going to be also ink blending in some rainbows. So I'm going to be using Rosy Cheeks, Guppy, Later Gator, Over the Moon first, and then Later Gator is our green. I'm also going to be using Remember Me for the blue, and probably my favorite ink so far of Simon Hurley Create is the Crown Me. It's such a gorgeous purple color, and I'll link to a video up above here where I used it to create a watercolor background. So off camera, I stamped and colored in the sunflower. And I actually cut this out with my scan and cut, and then I cut 3 more because I wanted this to have some dimension to be able to stand up off the background without having to use foam tape. I am sending this through the mail. This is a birthday card from my mom, and so I didn't want it to get crushed. I wanted to make sure it had some good dimension on it. So I've already glued 2 of the 3 extras that I cut out, and I'm going to be using some Gina Connect glue. And I'm just going to go all around the extra one and add it on there. And I will say, I absolutely hate to fussy cut. So if you only have, if you don't have a scan and cut and these don't have dies with them, these flowers are really easy to fussy cut. I mean, honestly, even me hating it, I probably could have fussy cut it, but it was just easier to throw it in the scan and cut. So don't worry about, if you don't have a scan and cut, can you do this? You definitely can. Fussy cutting this will be very simple. So when I added my extra layers, I decided to kind of offset them a little bit to give them some shadow, because when I cut it with the scan and cut, I actually decided to have it cut right up against the line. But I wanted some of that white shadow to kind of help it pop as well. So all I did was I just kind of offset it, and you can do that as well if you're not good at leaving the extra kind of little white frame when you're fussy cutting. If you want to cut right up against the line and then just kind of put your layers on the back to where they're kind of positioned where it looks like an outline. I am using a Nuvo shimmer pen to go over just my sunflower, and I will have the Copic colors that I use to color these down below. It's very simple coloring. Very simple shading. It was a really easy flower to color, which is what I love about the stamp set. You can make beautiful cards without really taking a lot of time. I am also off camera going to go in and use some of the Nuvo crystal glaze on that center, which you'll see in the pictures. So you can see the great shine you get from that Nuvo pen, and you can use several. I know Spectrum Noir has a great one, any type of glitter pen, Lawn Fawn. So now we're going to move on to the background, and I typically will use some of the spray, but because I was going to be repositioning this and I wasn't sure if I was going to turn it over, I decided to just use some purple tape. So I put my stencil down, and I'm using a life-changing blender brush here, and I'm going to go in and start with Rosy Cheeks. So as I go in with the color, and I am going to speed this up just for time's sake, as I go in with the color, so I go in with Rosy Cheeks first, and then I'm going to move on to Guppy. Once I lay Guppy down, I'm going to go back with the Rosy Cheeks again. So when I lay my next color, I'm then going to go back with the previous one just to make sure that I have a really good blend. So you can see here, I'm just going in with the Guppy, which is a really pretty dark pink. I wanted something that wasn't really light, and something that if I used a pretty heavy hand, I could get some good color with, because I am really heavy-handed when it comes to ink blending. So I'm going to speed it up, but you'll see that now I'm going in with Guppy, and then I will go back and add the rosy cheeks. And then I'll move on to Over the Moon, but then I'll go back and add the guppy in. And I do have a towel there that I'm using to wipe off my brush every time. It's not wet, it's just a dry cloth. So I'm just going back and forth here. And you see there I actually messed up. I went in and used Guppy instead of the Over the Moon, and it's okay, I just went back in with the Over the Moon. So these don't have to be perfect, it's a rainbow. And we're going to flip the stencil and go on top of it, so just keep on going. So I went in with the Crown Me, and then I'm going back in with the Remember Me. So now what I'm gonna do is I did this in a portrait. As you can see there, the beautiful rainbow color you get. I love this leaf stencil. So now I'm going to flip it so it's landscape. And I'm not going to flip my stencil over. I'm going to keep it the same side up. But now I'm going to do it as if it was on a landscape. So it's going to give some overlapping and some really cool details. And I encourage you to take your stencils and flip them in different ways. You could even put it diagonally here and kind of see what type of overlay you get. So now I'm just going back in with the exact same thing, except this time I just started at the bottom. I started with the purple, so I started with Crown Me, and then I will go into the Remember Me and once again go back, and I skipped a lot of that for you. So now we've got the rosy cheeks, which is finishing it off. And like I said, I did the exact same process. And it's really important that you go back in with that previous color just to make sure your blends are blending really well and you don't have those harsh lines. And there you go. So you can see you get this gorgeous, just kind of random. You can't even, like, you can tell they're leaves, but they could have really been any pattern. And I encourage you to look at your stencils, see what you have. And I'm going through, and even though this was in rainbow, I'm showing you here that, you know, if you like the purple on top, you could flip it. I decided to go ahead and keep the rosy cheeks and keep it kind of in a rainbow order. So you'll notice there, and this, I lost the film footage of this, but I actually cut down my panel and decided to mat it on a piece of Lawn Fawn Sugarplum. So this is a really pretty purple background. And I decided to do my sentiment, the happy birthday. Very simple. I wanted it just black and white so it would pop out. And I have to tell you something, I was really surprised pleasantly when I pulled the happy birthday off the Bestest Friends set. The happy and the birthday, I was expecting it to be connected like most sets are, and this one was separated. So if you're somebody who is afraid to cut your stamps, which I know many of us are, I really have no problem with it. I've done it and know it'll go back together on a block. But this really takes that fear out for you. So you can arrange this happy birthday however you want, which is really cool. I was really excited that Simon Hurley did that. So I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool, which in my case I use a bag, and then some of the Brutus Monroe embossing ink. And I am going to use my old faithful, the Alabaster Brutus Monroe white embossing powder for this. And I am going to cut this out with the MFT Fishtail sentiment, which if you have watched my videos, you've been on my channel, you know that when I emboss, usually if it's white, it's going to be Alabaster, and if I'm cutting out a sentiment, it's the MFT Fishtail sentiment. I love these sentiment strips because as I've said before, I cannot cut the little fishtail straight to save my life, so these take all the frustration out. So I'm just going in and adding my Alabaster, and this is a great crisp white. And I just used a Lawn Fawn acrylic block. I actually did not have my Misty out at all during this card. I stamped the flower out on an acrylic block as well. So I'm just going through, making sure I have a good coverage, and then I will use my Wagner heat tool to heat set this. And I did pull out a coffee filter, but I didn't end up using it. And I do keep Swiffer cloths next to one of my drawers next to my desk, and that's what I use to wipe up my embossing powder. It was a trick I saw Jennifer McGuire do a couple years ago, and it is amazing. Love it for glitter, embossing powder, any of that stuff. So I'm just going through and positioning and deciding how I want my banner to go, and I did move my banner's not, the sentiment in the middle is not specifically in the middle. But you know what, at this point, I just went with it. It's for my mother. She'll love it regardless, especially in the times that we're in right now. I'm hoping that it'll brighten her day. So I just went ahead and went with it. It still ended up coming out okay. For somebody who's not a crafter, they probably wouldn't even notice it. So I am using the Gina K Connect glue and placing that down, just kind of trying to decide how far down I want my flower to go. So once I've got that in place, I am going to go ahead and use some 3M foam tape to pop my banner up, because remember I added the dimension to the flower. I wanted to make sure I had some dimension on my banner as well. So I'm adding the 3M foam tape to that. And I will tell you, had I done this again, what I would have done is put the foam tape on either side of the stem on my banner, because it kind of added some extra dimension, but it's okay. It all came out fine. But if you want to recreate this card, or you're doing something similar, just make sure you that's an idea. And I was just showing you there, when I have extra pieces, I just put them on the outside of my roll, and then I can pull them off, just so that way I'm not wasting it. So here is our happy birthday. We're going to add that on, get it straight, which it is not currently. And that finishes up our card. I am going to go in, like I said, and add the Nouveau Crystal Glaze to it. So very simple, fun, cheerful card. And I hope that you'll take a look at some of the stencils you have and see what you can do with them. And of course, it doesn't have to be rainbow colors. You could do a monochromatic. So many fun things you can do with stencils. It's a great inexpensive tool in our craft room. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope that you'll consider subscribing. Thank you so much and have a great day.